Welcome, traveler, to Folk Recovery May Cheung, and here is May's story.
My name is May Cheung, and I am a singer-songwriter, folk indie artist. I currently live in upstate New York, and I am a new mom. And I've been playing music I guess for a very long time, but I've uh, just been on this journey as initially a jazz artist turned folk artist. And I have an array of influences from both sides and beyond. So that's where I am. That's me. I am folk because my spirit is represented by the aesthetic, and beyond the aesthetic, the sort of vehicle that allows me to tell my stories. When you look at the definition of folk on Wikipedia, for example, you can see that the origins of folk music are very much defined by local communities or local like cultures and the music that they created pretty much just very in a raw fashion, with no structure or maybe no real influence from anywhere before, maybe just like oral tradition and I think tradition being that is the key. And I fell into the tradition of folk, simply because I love the aesthetic, but I also felt that folk music was the vehicle for me to tell my story, my life story, and it works for me. I found folk through Joni Mitchell, and I studied while studying at McGill. I was involved in a couple of jazz combos, and the bassist in one of the combos that I was in, the bassist, Anna Ruddick, who's actually very involved in the rock pop scene in Toronto, she presented Blue Motel Room by Joni Mitchell, and we played it, and I loved the song at the moment, and it wasn't until a few years later, I guess many years later, when I moved to New York, and a friend of mine had an annual Joni Mitchell celebration concert show, and she would get all of her Canadian friends that were living in New York, musician friends, and we would rehearse just an array of Joni Mitchell's repertoire. And I just was taken by the sort of the crossroads in the sort of the enmeshment of jazz and folk music. And I've heard her music before, a lot of her music, but it didn't really resonate with me until I saw both sides of her, no pun intended. And that was sort of the gateway. And then I started checking out the open mics in New York City and Brooklyn, and one of them is called Big City Folk, and the sort of premise is that every week you show up with a new song, and the host of the open mic decides like a prompt word by looking into a random book and picking a word with his eyes closed, and points to a page on the book and says, "This is your next word. This is your prompt for next week." And it was just such a great community to be in. And whenever I get to go down to the city, I try to hop in for an open mic session there because they're like family, and there's no judgment or anything like that. And I think being a part of that crew helped me really have like a home base where I could try out new songs and just take risks and come up with new ideas through other artists that I see there. I also found folk through living upstate. I live in a town called New Paltz, and it's about 40 minutes south of Woodstock, and which has a ton of history. You can feel the energy there as you're walking through the town. It's a bit touristy, but you can still sort of imagine. I mean, but Woodstock is different from Bethel, where the actual Woodstock festival took place. So I think living upstate and being around that energy has reignited my curiosity and my sort of openness to and reception to learning more about folk music. And I just think that it's been really great to do more research on the places that are around me, like the Levon Helm studios are not too far from me, 40 minutes drive. And Levon Helm has made such a huge mark on folk music and music in general. And I mean, and so being within that vicinity is like so humbling, and just to know that there's more to learn as an artist. I see folk recovery in Canada as something that is blossoming. There's awareness, and there are many artists that come through. My hopes and dreams is for folk music to really take a renaissance, and to have the sort of like seem sort of uplifting support and caliber as sort of these jazz festivals that happen. Being in Montreal, that just sort of reignited something for me too. There's like the annual Folk Alliance International that happens, that is super cool, that I attended in 2019. And those are great. I wouldn't even call them initiatives because they're established, but I think that we should tap into and give the space for folk artists to really express themselves, or just be supported as storytellers, as not only just beyond being an artist, a storyteller, a vehicle for proactive political activism. So just beyond being an artist that plays and does the gig and then clocks out, I suppose. But I think this is why I chose to become a folk indie artist. I wanted my story, or I wanted to be more than just like I just felt that folk music helped me also define myself, but speak up, and I didn't really think about what it was like to be an Asian folk artist. I just wanted to do it. And I think that's the first step, is just to do it, and to build that confidence, and to not really think about well, what others think. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just really about showing up. And it's a conversation I've had with a few other POC artists in the folk world, and it's just really important that we show ourselves. And I don't mean to, like, kind of like put ourselves in a sort of like special box or something, but I think that because visually I'm a minority in this vast world of in the music scene in general. I think it's just important to represent, and just keep doing what I'm doing, even though sometimes there's a little voice inside of my head that's like, yeah, do you really want to be doing this? And I'm just like, well, I've been doing this for a very long time, so you can be quiet. But I think that folk recovery in Canada is important. It is Canada. I think I'm speaking so broadly, but Canada prides itself in its diversity, and I think that diversity is something that we can all support in the various facets of it, whether it's like arts, music, or sports even. It's something that I really miss and adore about Canada. That is not to say that there, obviously prejudgments or sort of like racism doesn't happen. It happens nonetheless, all the time, everywhere, every day. So yeah, that's what that's my thought on that. My final share with you, traveler, is to tell your story. And everyone has a story to tell, ups and downs, and the trials and tribulations of living this life. They come with background story, and people need to hear your story as an audience member. And what drew me to folk music is listening to other artists, and such as, gosh, I mean, even if I can even label Karen Dalton and these singer-songwriters that tell their story, that lay it out. Neil Young, I'm trying not to say Joni Mitchell, because she's such a strong entity in the folk world. And Brandi Carlile, like it just keeps, the list just keeps going on and on. But when singer and songwriters tell their story, it's really because they lived it. And as an audience member, I encourage you to find your voice and tell it, and tell your story, whether it's through poetry, just simply recording it, because I feel like, why not give yourself a platform? Why not give yourself an outlet? It's the most healing thing that we can do for ourselves, to tell our story. And I think as a global thing, telling our story and healing through telling our story is the best thing we can do for each other to ameliorate our life quality and our just sort of existence as humans.
Thank you, Traveler, for joining us on this Folk Recovery oral history production, created by guest storytellers with contributions from Gaitrie Killings, ASL performer and advisor, Joni NehRita, folk community advisor and sound producer, Karen Young, technical producer, Stephanie Williams, assistant producer, Alyssa Matthews, station manager at CJRU 1280 AM, Allison Skirm, Special Collections and Liaison Librarian at Toronto Metropolitan University Libraries, Heather Hewitt, Folk Recovery Logo Designer, as well as Senior Artwork Specialist and Yogi. And special thanks to our friends, family, and community supporters, and to our funder, the Ontario Arts Council. I am Kijo Buchanan, narrator and executive producer. Ashe.